and welcome. This is week 2 of Media Law and Ethics 2020. I hope you enjoyed last week's session and I hope that you will enjoy today. You have probably received the policies that I sent you. It's a lot of text and it's quite a bit of stuff, but the purpose of today is to translate it into a more enjoyable format and to have a nice chat with you guys so that you know how these policies actually help you. I'm just going to admit a few more into our meeting. Okay, so let's get cracking. Okay, today we are going to recap on the press code. We're going to discuss the feedback I've received from you all. Thank you very much for completing the practical exercise. I've received really awesome replies from you guys. We're going to be chatting about social media and how to use it to your advantage and really get your personal brand out there, as well as that of your publication. And we'll be chatting about staying safe and handling difficult situations on and offline in the best possible way. Okay, we have a few more people joining us. Okay, yeah, we're almost at 30 computers again. That is good. Admit all. So I have my cell phone with me as usual. If there's any technical problems, please feel free to just give me a WhatsApp or a call. I'll keep the corner of my eye on it. Okay, so some practical exercise feedback. I made some notes on the info that you guys provided me with, and I recorded it in video form. Okay, I'm going to play you guys this one.
Boxing gloves are on as the Marula Fest approaches. This is the headline of a Phalaborwa Herald story that has us wrapped up in a nasty defamation case. I want to thank you all for your contributions and for participating in the practical exercise this week. The feedback that we received from our newsrooms were of a high standard. So this festival is an annual highlight on the Phalaborwa calendar. And we were approached by anonymous sources and a whistleblower from the municipality who obviously requested anonymity as well. They made allegations that 2 of the organizers exploited local artists who qualified through an audition process to perform at this festival. They said that the organizers expected kickbacks from these artists.
Sorry, guys. Okay, video's being iffy. Okay, so the story was that the organizers expected kickbacks from the artists who qualified to perform at this festival, and also that they were busy with corrupt activities. So the sources identified these 2 guys that allegedly were corrupt as Donald Mukare and Ditaba Malapane. And the sources also said that the local organizing committee were turning a blind eye to their alleged corrupt activities. So the story goes on about how unfair this is and people are being mistreated. No one's really on record, all anonymous, and then at the end they say that those implicated could not be reached for comment. So a few years later, we get a letter of demand and they want to sue us. And at the time, we had a complete different newsroom, and they then published an apology saying, we admit that we've defamed these people. We admit that we acted unlawfully, meaning that we now have to fight a court case where we already admitted in writing to having defamed them. So I don't know. I don't sleep at night. But I thank you guys for your feedback on the merits, and I'm just going to summarize what you guys had to say. A cool response I received from Northern Media, thank you guys, was that we could have just waited a week and gotten more comment and spoken to more local artists, and maybe we would have had someone on record. So I thought that would have been really good advice. You guys also said that clauses 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.7 of the press code had been contravened. In short, that just means we didn't have enough info, so we ended up telling an unbalanced story. And allegations were presented as fact, which, as you guys know, really is a problem. And I can tell you what we have discovered subsequently. So while trying to fight this case, we've been speaking to local artists. All of the artists we've spoken to since have denied speaking to the newspaper. The whistleblower within the municipality refuses to speak to us. He also denies speaking to the paper. The local organizing committee have all gone on record to back the two men identified in the story, and they have informed us that what was published in the newspaper is entirely untrue. So it is a situation. Thank you guys for your feedback. I was really impressed at the high standard, and yeah, well done on that exercise. Then regarding the press code, you will recall me saying in the past that if you need to get a tattoo with the press code on your body somewhere to ensure that you make it part of your existence, then that is what you must do. So please do whatever you need to ensure that you know the press code. Please print it out on A3 and put it up against the wall in the newsroom. So I've done my part. I've given the press code to you. You've discussed it. From now on, I am going to need you guys to just ensure that you know it and make it part of your daily job. Make it your own, whatever it takes. So the bunch of policies you've received. There's a social media one. There's a social media disaster one. You would have seen, I'm just admitting someone quickly to our meeting. There we go. You will have seen that there's an internet and device usage policy. We've got one dealing with plagiarism, copyright, content aggregation. The list goes on. We're going to run through all of them, and I promise it's going to be more exciting than the text itself. So first of all, social media policy. This is Daniel Friedman. He was the news editor of The Citizen. Very, very cool guy. He's also a comedian, really funny. And this was a press release that we had to draft in January this year announcing his suspension. As you can see, we were dealing with public concerns regarding statements that he made on his Twitter account. And I'm going to show you what he said. He said that Freedom Front Plus supporters are necessarily racist. He also said, okay, so he's been feuding on Twitter with a few people. This included DA member Ronaldo Gous. This included Willem Petzer, a guy who is very controversial on social media. And it also included social media personality Soulnomics. So he's been fighting with these people for quite a while. And then he said on his Twitter status, this is the year that these lying right-wing scumbags will learn to regret ever placing my name in their herpes-ridden mouths. Yes. So Mr. Petzer then went onto social media and said, this is the Citizen's news editor. Do with that information what you want, public. Public was livid and they demanded disciplinary action, which then happened, and Mr. Friedman is no longer with us. The purpose of telling you this story is not to discredit this guy, because he really is he's a good journalist and he's a very cool person. The purpose of telling you this is to inform you how dangerous social media can be, and I want you to know that we have strict social media policies in the company. And I need you to read them, and I need you to abide, because I don't want you to be a News 24 headline that says you have been fired. That is important to me, to not have you in that position. Okay, it's very important for journalists to be unbiased. So always ensure that you don't pick a side. If you support a certain political party, do so privately. Don't do that on social media. It comes across as unprofessional and it makes you seem biased. If you have certain convictions, well, you should not be in journalism if you are a racist or a sexist, or if you discriminate based on any ground. Please don't have content like that on your social media profile. It is unacceptable and it is a ground for dismissal. So go onto your social media profile. If you said something unacceptable when you were 19 years old, please go and delete it. Please ensure that your social media profile reflects the professional that you are. It is very important. On that topic, while I was finalizing my presentation, I came across Mr. Petzer today. He is a bit of a rough one on social media, I must say, but luckily he's not a journalist, so we don't have to be concerned with his ethics. He tackled Rian Grobler, who is a journalist from News24, recently, yesterday actually. Rian got in a fight with Armand Hofmeyer, and he called him all kinds of horrible words. And Willem Petzer then took screenshots of what this journalist said, and Willem said, this is a senior journalist from News24, and he's conducting himself in this way on social media. South Africa, do you think this is acceptable? South Africa is saying no. You are a public figure, like it or not. You are in your community, you're kind of like a celebrity. I know it sounds funny, but that is, people look up to you. So please ensure that your social media profile lives up to that, because you are more important than you might realize. So those were the don'ts, and now we get to the do. Most of you know Ashton. She's one of our editors. She is involved at Joburg North, and this is what her Facebook profile looks like, and I think it's really cool. She has a journalism quote: journalism, like democracy, is not something that is achieved. It's a work in progress, and not every day is as good as the last. And then the photo, her profile photo, is Ashton in action in the newsroom doing what she does best. And that's really, really cool. So you're a proud member of your community. Why not make your cover photo like a picture from maybe a beacon in your area? And you can have your profile photo maybe at your desk working, or in your community on your beat behind your camera. You can use your social media platforms to market yourself, because you are a brand. Your personality is a brand, and you can use social media to advertise yourself and to advertise your Caxton publication that you're involved with as well. And you can see that is what Karen Watts is doing. You all know Mrs. Watts. She is one of our general managers, one of our bosses, and she used her LinkedIn profile, as you can see here, to share that Corinne is the new editor at Highway Mail, the new group editor, in fact. And she uses her LinkedIn to promote not only her own brand, but also that of her employee and of the publication, as you can see. On the right-hand side, we have a status that was shared by Bennett. Many of you know Bennett. He was responsible for news in Centurion for quite a while. And one of my friends actually, to this day, refers to Bennett as Mr. Centurion, because Bennett used his social media platforms to interact with his readers. He told them everything. You can see his status. I'm meeting with Centurion Mall officials today about crime at the center. Have you been affected? Let me know. Call me. Email me. And then he drops a pin and he tells them where he is. So his readers always knew where he was and what he was doing. He really used social media very well to interact with them. And then on branding, in the right-hand corner, you see the Parlotones reading one of our publications, the Nelspruit Post. We took this photo at one of their performances, and they retweeted it, and it got so many likes and retweets that it ended up being a wonderful branding exercise. So always remember, keep a copy of your publication with you. You never know who you might run into at an event. Get them to read your paper. Take a photo, take a selfie. Place yourself with credible people, credible places, credible brands, and yeah, spread your brand, spread your face, spread your publication, and use social media for good, because we can. Okay, so that is the first policy that I wanted to deal with. Secondly, social media disasters. We have had many of those, and yeah, it's chaos. And this is one of the most chaotic scenarios we've had. It happened at Standard on Advertiser. Now, just for the record, the publication didn't do anything wrong. And usually if a social media disaster hits you, it's not your fault. It's usually the community members who are up in arms about something, and they use our platform to fight with one another or stir some sort of discrimination. In this case, the publication wrote a story about event organizers failing to clean up the showgrounds after an event. and it was 11 at night, everyone went to bed, and then someone commented, "The baboons screw everything up," in response to the story on our page. It was 11 at night, and it just ignited. It was horrible. Someone responded, "Racist sons and daughters of bitches." Now, I would have also been furious if someone made that kind of comment. From there on, everyone started fighting. Different races were fighting with one another. There were threats of intimidation. There were threats of violence. Residents threatened to hurt and kill one another. That is how bad it got. The next morning at 8, when they arrived at the office, our Facebook page was the breeding ground, literally, of intimidation. So what do? And that is why we developed the social media disaster policy. It sets out how you handle these types of crises. Literally, it has a step-by-step guide for every type of chaos you can think of. In this case, we started with reference to our user-generated content policy. Now, each of you have this on your website. You actually have this policy already. It states that readers should behave in a certain way when they interact with our online platforms. We don't tolerate racism, we don't tolerate sexism, we don't tolerate discrimination. So the first thing that we did was to share this policy and to tell our readers and the residents of Standerton, this is not on. So please refrain from this behavior, and if you do it again, we will ban you, we will block you. And we actually immediately started banning the people who were behaving in an unacceptable way. And that started to calm everyone because they needed us to take a stand, and we did that. We wrote letters to those who needed to be informed that we will now remove them from the platform. We took action, and 24 hours later, everything was under control. So if something like that happens on your platform, open up the policy. You can see who you need to call. By the way, you need to call me. So if something like that happens, give me a call, give Robert a call. We'll chat to Irma and we'll sort you out. There is a solution for every problem, and the policy serves that purpose. Okay, talking of disasters, safety, your online safety is also part of the social media disaster policy. Many of you have probably been either insulted or badmouthed or harassed online following a story that you did. Unfortunately, it happens quite often, and many times it's something that you can brush off. It's not always that serious, but if it happens that you are harassed or intimidated to an extent that scares you, you can call us. There are options that you have legally. There are practical things we can do to protect you. If you feel that maybe if you're reporting on a certain criminal and this person is literally endangering your life, don't keep quiet about it. It is your duty to talk if you feel that you are in danger. It's not going to help if you just keep quiet. So please, if you ever feel that your job is placing you in danger, you need to speak up because we can help you. But if we don't know about it, there's nothing we can do. If you go to a crime scene or if you go out to report, please don't act in a way that will endanger you. Your safety comes first. Yes, news is important to us, but if you are not safe, you cannot deliver the news. So always keep safety in mind. If you're on a crime scene, don't do something that will endanger you. Even if the adrenaline rush is all over you, please just keep that in mind. I know many of you struggle with access to courtrooms. That is a problem. Please call me if you're struggling with that. I have a draft letter that I send to magistrates and court managers. Entrenching your right to be in court, we explain to them why you have that right and why they cannot take it away from you. If they then still don't help you, then we call Mr. Crispin Piri. He is from the Department of Justice, and usually he then calls the court manager and ensures that you get access to a courtroom. So if you have those type of problems, please don't hesitate to call me. If you need a letter setting out your rights, please don't hesitate to call. Yeah, we're always here for you. We've actually had a situation in Soweto last year where they almost detained our journalist. They took his camera, they literally just grabbed it and locked it up in the police safe. and the journalist was on weekend duty. So we had to jump through hoops, and we eventually threatened the police with an urgent interdict, which we would have done if they hadn't returned the journalist's camera. But even in situations like those, please note that we're always here for you. You can always give us a call. Then there is an internet and device usage policy. Long story short, use work tools for work purposes. Please do not watch the latest season of This Is Us on your work computer. I think you guys know that. It always amazes me how you still get people who do things like watching porn at work. Don't do that. It is unacceptable. And there is a policy that tells you not to do it. The Internet and Device Usage Policy is that document. So please don't put flash sticks with viruses in computers. Please speak to IT before you do that. Please keep an eye on dodgy emails. You know, the basic things. We need to keep our computers clean and safe. Now the big one, plagiarism, content aggregation, and copyright. You will remember last week we spoke about copyright really being an issue, and we're getting sued and we're paying settlements, and it is actually getting quite out of hand. This policy deals with that. The main thing I need you to know is that every single thing is copyrighted, and I'm going to illustrate that with the same silly exercise that I do every year. So this is a blank piece of paper, and this is a smiley, and the smiley is copyrighted. Don't know if you can see the smiley, but it is copyrighted. So that illustrates that every single thing that is created in the world is by default copyrighted. Copyright is not registered. Whether or not you put that little C sign at the end of your work, it's copyrighted anyway. So you can't go onto Google to get a photo for your story. You may not do it. It is illegal to do it. We will get sued. So if you've ever Googled a photo, please never do it again. And if you remember what story you did it for, please go into the back end and replace the featured image. We've actually had to delete our entire feature category from our websites because of all the Google images that were used in that category. That's how serious the problem is. So please don't Google images ever. We have free stock libraries that you can use for features and soft stories. You guys know them. Pexel, you can write that down, P-E-X-E-L. You can use Morguefile, as in a morgue where deceased bodies go, Morguefile. You can also use Unsplash. So free stock libraries exist, but you are a journalist and a photojournalist, really, if you're in community journalism. So please take your own photos. This is a reminder from last week that if you Google photos, you will be the person responsible for our 600,000 Rand legal bill. Please do not be that person. On this topic, however, if you receive editors, this is important, if you receive an email from Dave Miles from contentpetite.website, you can remember that his emails are bogus. So what he does is he takes Unsplash and Pexel and Morguefile images, and then he alleges that they belong to him, and then he sues. So he writes a letter of demand, and then he hopes that you get such a scare that you pay him. So please just keep that name in the back of your mind. And if old Dave sends you a mail, just forward it to me. I'll keep them all on file. Okay, don't pay Dave. Okay, so we know that you can't Google photos. When can I get a photo from social media? Ideally, don't. Ideally, take your own photos. But if you absolutely must get a photo from social media, there are two things you must remember. Firstly, privacy settings. Secondly, copyright law. In terms of South African law, you may only use someone's photo or video if they've given you permission. But there's one exception. It's called the Fair Usage Rule. The Fair Usage Rule applies if content is made available to the public. So I make a public post, I make my public photo on Facebook. It's not the work of a media professional, so it's not the work of a photographer. It's just a random photo that someone put on Facebook, for example. I use it off of social media, and I use it for breaking news reporting. I use it to a limited extent. I try to get permission from whoever I'm taking it, and I credit the source. So this is a bunch of theory. I'm going to show you a video that explains how it works in practice.
Let me quickly illustrate how the fair usage rule would work in practice. You'll recall that I referred to Willem Petzer earlier. He's a Facebook user who regularly makes quite controversial statements. And let's say, hypothetically, I were to write a story about something that Willem Petzer said. And I need his photo. I'm not a friend of his, but I can access his profile photo on Facebook. As you can see, it's publicly available. However, I can see that this is probably the product of a photo shoot, and therefore there could be some copyright issues. So I'm going to move along to the next profile picture, which seems to have been taken at home. I don't think there are any copyright issues there. Once again, it's publicly available, so I should be able to use it in connection with a breaking news story if I do so to a limited extent. Now I need to contact Willem and at least try to get permission to use his photo. So I will typically send him a message and say, hello Willem, my name is Elena. I'm writing what you said on Facebook and I want to use your photo. I don't have to wait for his response because in terms of the fair usage rule, I only have to try. I can then save the photo and I can use it for my story. Please remember, if you do something like this, to credit the Facebook page where you got the image from.
Okay, so that is fair usage in a nutshell. I will upload this to my Facebook page as well as my YouTube channel. I've received a message, thank you guys, from Lowveld Media. They said that the presentation is a bit too soft, so I'm just going to ensure that all of my volumes are as loud as they can possibly be. Okay, they are. Sorry guys, I'm going to try and keep the microphone a bit closer. Okay, so then this is something that I got from Letaba, Mupani, Hoedspruit, Palaborwa, the Herald team. Thank you guys. They got this photo from Facebook. This is a good example of the fair usage rule. Lenta Rode appeared in court. They didn't have a photo of her, and they were able to get one from her Facebook page. And the fair usage rule was implemented here because it was in connection with breaking news. They used it to a limited extent. They liaised with her and her attorney. They knew that they were taking the photo from her Facebook page, and then they also credited her Facebook page. So that's a good example of this usage. We don't plagiarize. We know that, basic rule of journalism. But then what you also can't do is content aggregation that is unfair. That means that plagiarism is I'm copying word for word. Content aggregation is I'm repeating what you said in different words. And unfair content aggregation happens when I repeat what you said without adding anything unique to it. So I'm parroting News 24's story without doing my own homework. That is basically what unfair content aggregation means. This is a practical example. About 2 years ago, News 24 reported that Pitch Black Afro had been arrested. And Citizen then wrote that Pitch Black Afro was reportedly arrested for wife's murder. They literally said what News 24 had said without adding any unique information. They just paraphrased News 24's story. So that came down to unfair content aggregation. We needed to fix it. What we did was to call the police and say, look, we have this story, we have this information, but we need something unique. What can you tell us? The police then said, well, we can't even confirm that he's been arrested. So what we did was to change our story and say, it's reported that he's been arrested, but police say they can't confirm it. So then we had our own unique angle to the story, which means that what we wrote was justified because there was something unique to it. Okay, so if you see something on News 24 and you want to follow up on it, by all means do that, but always have your own angle to a story and always add something unique to it. We'll deal with aggregation in this week's practical exercise some more so that you guys can have a clear understanding. Reporting on death is always difficult. We have a few examples here. All of these stories were tough. Communities reacted, some were angry. Writing on death is never easy. And we have a death reporting policy to try and guide you through it. A death knock is one of the most difficult things you'll ever do, is to go to the family and say, you lost your mother, would you like to speak to us? The policy helps you with that and guides you. Suicides, generally something we don't report on, because a suicide will seldom be in the public interest. Somebody who decides to take their own life in the privacy of their own home has nothing to do with us. And the policy addresses that. But then you get situations where a suicide can be in the public interest. It's very seldom, but it happens. And this policy explains when it is and when it isn't. Examples of a suicide that will be reported on is, for example, in the West Rand, we had a woman who, there's no sensitive way of saying this, she hung herself from a tree in a public park. So there's no way of keeping it out of the public eye. In Pretoria, we had someone who, I can't remember if he flung himself off of a bridge or whether if it was also a hanging, but it's very public. So in that case, obviously you can't keep it private. And other times we had a guy in the Lowveld. He was really a stand-up guy in the community, and he died as a result of suicide. It was in public interest to say that he died. His nickname was Mamba. He was a snake catcher. He was really a local hero. So the story was that he died, and we reported on that, but we omitted that he died as a result of suicide. So sometimes it's in the public interest to say someone has passed, but you don't have to say that suicide was the reason. And this policy will help guide you in that respect. Okay, reporting on politicians and politically affiliated persons. Those of you who have attended my training in the past know that I have a particular distrust towards politicians. And one of the stories that best illustrate this was a Vryheid Herald story from about 2.5 years ago. We received a tip-off from politicians saying that another politician appeared in court in connection with a political killing. This is serious, for murder, accessory to murder. And the sources said, don't worry, we know you can't make it to court, but we'll update you. We will let you know what happens in court. So the journalist writes the story and says, you know, he's going to appear in court now in connection with this killing. Long story short, we published it over 83 websites only to learn on the Monday morning that the information was false. He never appeared in court. He was never even a suspect. So don't take their word for it. When it comes to politicians, when it comes to elections, you can never be too careful. And therefore, I have the 5-point guidance. If someone comes to you with an allegation about a politically affiliated person, or anyone for that matter, ask for proof. Ask for documentary proof. Second, sources, named sources. Avoid anonymous sources. If you have anonymous sources, have at least 3. They must be independent. 3 people from the same political party, like Mr. Malema would say, same WhatsApp group. Doesn't help. Get independent sources, very important. Politicians have rights. For some reason, people think that they have lesser rights than we do. That is an untrue assumption. Please ask them for comment in response to any incriminating allegations. Draft your story and read it and reread it. Ask yourself, has everyone that is implicated in the allegations, have they been asked for comment? And did I write in my story what the outcome of asking them for comment was? And number 5, press releases must always be investigated. When elections come along, political parties go haywire, and they write press releases about one another with all kinds of allegations that must be investigated because it is very often false. And then I just want to say, Estella Naicker absolutely nailed it. She nailed political reporting. As you can see, this is a massive story she did. What they tried to hide was the front page heading. And this was page upon page upon page where Newcastle Advertiser exposed corruption that you wouldn't even believe. It was so thorough. Do yourself a favor, Google Northern Natal News and Afzal Rehman, and you will read the 8-part story, and you will see literally every person implicated was given the opportunity to comment, given the right of reply. And I think that is a really good example of how to do it. Okay, consumer complaints. This is the last policy that we're dealing with. How many times have you been on the frustrating receiving end of someone who walks in and says, I bought a car and the car's not working, please put it in the newspaper. Or, I bought furniture and I'm not satisfied, please put it in the newspaper. People seem to think that we are a consumer complaints counter. And readers who want to complain about goods or services have the right to go to the Consumer Commission. They can go to the relevant Ombuds service. The policy guides you in determining whether they've done so and whether the outcome was fair and whether there's a story or whether there's anything newsworthy to work with. The policy then guides you in dealing with those against whom allegations are being made, because you guys know that whenever allegations are made against a business, they tend to get difficult. So the policy even has arguments that you can offer them to try and coax a reply out of them. I think you'll find it really handy. Okay, we have less than 1 minute. So we have a practical exercise again this week. I'll send it to you. It's about content aggregation. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please send them to me via WhatsApp and I'll answer them in next week's session. Please remember to fill out your training attendance lists. Thank you for your time, guys. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.